Welcome once again to the Cow Report. I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and with me sitting in for Fred Stafford is Arlene Krieger, our expert on education in the Eau Claire area. Welcome to the program, Arlene.
Thank you.
Of course, you know, Fred's a little bit under the weather today. Somehow he got a hold of pink eye. 79 years old, or 78 and a half, and he's got pink eye. Now, where would he get something like that? That's usually associated with little children, isn't it?
Yeah, or animals. He doesn't have any animals, does he?
Well, no telling what he's got in that back room over at his house there. Some people say he's an animal.
Sorry to hear he's sick.
Yeah, well, he's up there in years. I know they go to a lot of nursing home events and a lot of other things where there's elderly people, and it could be a possibility they picked it up there. But he's under the weather. Of course, when he's here last Monday night, he had bloodshot eyes, and at that time he didn't know what it was, but it turned out to be pink eye, of all things. Something that we all probably had when we were children. Of course, in a way, Fred is a child, you know it? All right, well, I suppose you've been hearing the news out there about Mexico and the Mexican bailout, and I guess we got a camera there. This Mexican bailout, well, now the truth can be told about NAFTA, Arlene. Everyone said what a great deal it was. Our congressman from the 3rd District voted for it. The Republicans once again rescued a failing Clinton who was about ready to throw in the towel and go back to Arkansas and eat chicken at Tyson Foods. Well, the Republicans saved the day, voted in NAFTA. You remember Ross Perot saying that there would be a giant sucking sound of jobs and all kinds of things going to Mexico. Of course, there are a lot of jobs, a lot of factories that went to Mexico, but you know something? Now the Americans are finding out what NAFTA is really about, especially all those Americans, the thousands of Americans that invested in the Mexican Stock Exchange with the big wild dreams about fortunes, and now they're sitting there with a handful of worthless pesos.
Yeah, I heard the bottom dropped out of that the other day.
Well, now Clinton is once again getting support from the Republicans. He's got nowhere else to turn, and the Republicans got nowhere elsewhere to turn now except to bail the Mexicans out. So they're going to take $40 to $45 billion of American tax money, and they're going to give it to the Mexicans. And so far, we don't know if there's going to be any strings attached to that, or it's just going to be an American taxpayer-funded bailout of another country. Now, one of the ideas behind NAFTA was to create a greater North America, kind of like what Milan Slobodovich, I think that's his name, Milosevic, yeah, the guy that heads the communist leader of the former Yugoslavia, which he calls now the Greater Serbia. Well, what the bankers and stuff were doing in the background with Mexico and Canada is to make a greater North America, which would include everything from the North Pole all the way to the South Pole. So far they had incorporated Canada, the United States, and Mexico into this. Well, now we found out that Mexico is basically going to be the 51st state. They're broke. They're shot. Their economy's shot. Their peso is going wildly out of control. The United States is propping it up. First they started out saying it would be about 8 billion. This article here from 4 or 5 days ago says 25 to 40 billion. Over the weekend, I heard it could be as high as 45 billion. So now we'll see the Republicans scrambling to cover themselves for the big mistake they made with NAFTA. And yes, folks, Ross Perot was right. Isn't that amazing?
Do you think we need to start worrying about GATT being the same thing for the whole world?
Well, for the sake of those Republicans that once again propped up a failing Clinton and rescued him and passed GATT. They're the ones that pushed GATT through the Congress, just like they did NAFTA. It wasn't the Democrats. The Democrats said, hey, NAFTA, GATT, the World Trade Organization, these are counterproductive to the American worker. They're great for China, where there's slave labor, or penny or nickel an hour if you're lucky, or if you happen to be a Christian that's in prison, you might have to work for free for the next 20 years, if you can live that long. Well, in Mexico, you know, the wages are pretty low and stuff, so it was great for the big industries, but right now GATT could be in trouble too. But see, they're They're still working on trying to implement NAFTA. I think it was Chile, or I think it's Chile or Peru, one of those two they're trying to bring into NAFTA. But the eventual goal is to get everybody from the tip of South America all the way up to the Eskimos on the North Pole. They want to get everybody on this continent, North, Central, and South America, into the World Trade Organization, into GATT, and into NAFTA. Basically, it's part of the one world government, and the only way you can do that is you got to start blending borders. So on the other border, to the north of us, we've got in Canada, we have a problem now with the Canadian dollar. Last I looked, it was down to 70 cents. So you take an American dollar up to Canada, it's worth $1.30, $1.40, somewhere in that range. Down here, a Canadian dollar is only worth 70 cents. Won't buy you much more than a can of pop. So the Canadian money is starting to suffer too.
Well, I know they pay $1 for a can of pop up there.
Well, in the last few weeks, their dollar has been hurting too. As you notice, they redesigned the Mexican peso. It used to be something like 2,500 pesos to make a dollar. Then all of a sudden, we woke up one day and it was only like 5 or 6 or 4 pesos to a dollar. So that was part of the wheeling and dealing of the bankers and the NAFTAites. And Ross Perot warned us about it, and you can just chalk this one up for Ross. Now, the GATT treaty had wide support from labor and people like Ross Perot, Jesse Jackson, Pat Buchanan, who's the guy that unsafe at any speed, Ralph Nader. They all said that that GATT was going to be a bigger boondoggle than NAFTA. So now GATT has just been passed in the last few months, so we'll have to wait maybe out a year to see exactly what's going to happen there. So unfortunately, it's bad news for us, because what's going to happen now in Mexico? If you can add up 2 and 2, what's going to happen to the Mexican workers?
I don't know. They're going to be out of work the way it looks.
And what are they going to want to do?
They're going to come here.
That's right. And we have a guaranteed minimum wage of 4 1/4, which is better than the 25, 30 cents or $1 they're making in Mexico. So the influx of illegal aliens is going to increase, and I'm sure it already has started. I know it started. Let's see, in the San Diego area, something like 500,000 illegal aliens a year try to cross over. That's just one area. You go over into Arizona and all of the large Texas border, and you got a border there that is just porous, and thousands of poor Mexicans are going to want to cross now because there's no jobs left in their own country. So we're creating a very serious problem. What we're creating is a problem in this country, and of all days, Martin Luther King's birthday, we're creating a problem now where we're bringing in a whole new class of people, an underclass of people that are a minority. They're poor. We're allowing them into the country. And what is happening is how are the poor, the Mexicans, the Indians, the blacks that are already in this country, how are they ever going to rise up out of poverty when we keep pouring more people into the big pot and it's overflowing already? How will you ever alleviate poverty when you keep adding more poor people to the pie that we keep throwing money at?
Yeah, when will people ever learn that the more the government tries to solve our problems for us, the more problems we have?
Well, that's true, but we could have solved our Kennedy and Johnson had a good idea on the war on poverty, but there was only one little problem. There's something like 30 to 50 million illegal aliens that have came in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And so they've kept pouring into that overflowing melting pot, which we call America. And no wonder you see blacks attacking Koreans in Los Angeles, because they're saying, hey, the Koreans they're rising above us. They're coming into our neighborhoods and putting up Korean stores. Why aren't blacks putting up black stores? They ask these questions. That's why they're burning these places down. They're being left out of the American dream. You got to have an American dream. You have to have it for everybody in the country. You can't raise one group above other groups in the country or below it.
Yeah, that's true.
Equal opportunity for everybody, and but if you keep adding people to the limited amount of jobs, then that means that eventually Americans won't be able to have jobs. Mexicans will come up here and say, hey, I'll gladly work for $4.35 an hour. Or an American will say, well, I'll tell you, it costs a lot to live in this country. I need $6 or $7 an hour. Well, a Mexican comes in and says, hey, it's a lot better than what I was getting, so I'll take it. So it keeps wages low, keeps an influx of cheap labor coming in, and it's hurting them. It's hurting bona fide Americans that have lived here for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 generations. It's a sad situation.
Yeah, it sure is.
Well, for all these new illegal aliens that are coming in, the magazines in this country do a great job of letting them know that they can smoke their life away. And here's the poison that they're using. It's called a cigarette. American corporations have they really got a winner with this one. Billions of dollars come in every year. 400,000 people die every year from these little sticks right here. Called tobacco. They got dozens of chemicals in them, all kinds of heavy metals. They even have, even when they put the low tar ones, they put special filters on so that you can figure out how to get around it so that you can get your dose of tar when you're in nicotine. It says lower tar nicotine right on them. Now we're getting revelations that the tobacco companies were creating a super nicotine tobacco down in South America and then shipping it back into the United States and supposedly blending it into the cigarettes so that they can keep the tar rate down, but boost the nicotine, because nicotine is the addictive substance in one of the greater addictive substances in tobacco. And some cigarette addicts say it's worse than heroin to get off of. Heroin addicts say, hey, I quit heroin and kicked that habit, but I'm still hooked on cigarettes. What's the deal? Well, the cigarette companies are figuring it out. They're losing 400,000 people a year. The only place they can go is to recruit young people. Now, the visual arts and the visual ads is what they have left. They don't have the television ads, so they have to rely on billboards and magazines. So in the latest issue of Life, which is read by a cross-section of the country, I found a bunch of cigarette ads. Oh, actually, there was 3 in this issue. This was on the back cover. This one here. You can't rush smooth flavor. They're pushing now they're telling you about preferred aged tobacco. They're trying to push their product now as being safe and a quality product. So they're pushing supposedly the lower tar nicotine cigarettes, because people they're realizing now that even the Food and Drug Administration has admitted that nicotine is an addictive substance. Finally, after all these years, they figured it out. That's government for you. A lot of bureaucrats shuffling papers. It took them all this time to figure it out. But this commercial is on the back page of the Life magazine. Of course, it has a warning. Now, I've always wondered why these warnings are so bland as compared to the warning on the side of a cigarette. There's a warning on the side of cigarettes here. And it's a warning that has to be on there by law. And it's by the Surgeon General. And you remember who the Surgeon General was. And anyway, this warning says, smoking by pregnant women may result in fetal injury, premature birth, and low birth weight. That's one of several that they can pick from. On this ad, it was the one on the back page of Life said, Surgeon General's warning, quitting smoking now greatly reduces serious risks to your health. In other words, if you quit, you're not going to die from tobacco poisoning and nicotine addiction. Now, I still claim that this is another ad that was in Life. I still claim that any ad that shows a woman and cigarettes together in it should have the warning about pregnancy, the same as it's on the side of this Marlboro pack. Well, this is an ad for Merit, which I think is a Philip Morris company, and isn't that what Marlboros are? Yeah, Marlboro's a Philip Morris company. So it says here, you can do it. You can switch down to lower tar and still get satisfying taste. So it seems like the push is on to push the low tar cigarettes. This is another example of it. And this one, there's a woman with a cigarette in her hand. And the warning says, quitting smoking now greatly reduces serious risk to your health. It says nothing about pregnancy or the unborn child. So they're pushing the lower tar and nicotine cigarette, but they're still not telling the woman that she could be poisoning the unborn baby inside of her. Well, as you know, Marlboro has had some of their people that have done their ads for them, their actors, have actually died
from lung cancer,
from smoking Marlboros. Yeah. But this is a 2-page spread about in the middle of the Life magazine for this month, and they run quite quite an ad in these here, and it really makes you think about, gee, maybe I can be a cowboy and ride horses and be out west and have a cowboy hat and smoke cigarettes. Is that what it is to be a man? Well, unfortunately, they have that little warning that they have to tell you by law down in the corner. It says smoking causes lung cancer, heart disease, emphysema, and may complicate pregnancy. They should upgrade that to say smoking will cause cancer, or smoking does cause cancer, lung cancer, lip cancer, throat cancer. Smoking does cause heart attacks and heart disease. Smoking does cause emphysema. And smoking will complicate your pregnancy and could cause fetal death. Behind every good story, there's a man who has lived it. Come to Marlboro country. Isn't that great? So that's where we're at here in 1995. They're still pushing the little poison cigarettes to everybody that can pick up a magazine. It doesn't matter whether you're 2 years old or 95. You can pick up that Life magazine and read that advertisement. And that's what the advertising companies have to go on, is the visuals, because they can no longer advertise on TV. So what do you think about smoking? You still smoking 3 packs a day?
No.
Well, that's good. When did you give it up?
Gave that up long years ago.
Well, we've had several calls coming in. Of course, the number is 839-5067, and we can leave that on the screen for college. And we'll take a call here on line 2 to get the program going. And so go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, first of all, Chuck, you know, the information you're giving us is wonderful, but to be honest, it's nothing new. You know, we are able to read the magazine and comprehend everything you're telling us. So first of all, I'd like to say quit repeating everything in the magazine, and secondly, the girl next to you is getting me very horny.
Well, you know, if you've got a problem with cigarettes, and you need to go to what I proposed, and when I ran for Congress, I proposed that we have tobacco addiction treatment centers, just like for alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, actually where somebody goes in to treatment, leaves their job. We would work on getting insurance coverage. It would be a list of all the things that the government can get involved in. This would be a good one for the government to set up. It would be treatment programs that work, not these 1% and 2% success rates, but treatment programs that have proven to be successful, and send people there that are addicted to this stuff and help them get off it. And if it takes 2 or 3 times, so be it, because it saves money down the road. Health costs, the people that are dying from tobacco-related diseases, that are filling the hospitals and the nursing homes and dying at home and tying up the oxygen machines, things of that nature. If we could use what's called prevention and get them to stop, especially the teenagers, that's who they're gearing this for. They've got to recruit young people, because the older people are dying off and the middle-aged people are dying from this poison. So they have to recruit the young people.
They might not have such fancy advertising either if the government would quit subsidizing the tobacco companies.
Yes, the government does subsidize tobacco companies, even in the state of Wisconsin. On the southwest part of the state, in Steve Gunderson's 3rd Congressional District, there's tobacco farmers. And they have a special little, quietly, few people know about, a little program in WIDA where you can get money to help grow tobacco, and that's a state program. But also, there are federal subsidies available to tobacco farmers, and that's thanks to people like Jesse Helms,
yeah, I know,
and
Jesse
others
Helms
that their whole state is nothing but one big tobacco field, so they're not going to buck the system. That's the people who put them in there. Claiborne Pell. That sounds like a cigarette, doesn't it? Pell Mell? Yeah. Okay, well, we'll take a call here. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck, you started off the program by talking about illegal aliens and welfare and so forth. Then you got into the tobacco aspect of it. First of all, I'd like to talk about the amount of jobs solely that tobacco industry supports. And you're talking about illegal aliens and welfare. Realistically, how many jobs do you think the tobacco industry satisfies? As well, what are you going to do about when the government legalizes marijuana? Why are you so resistant to change? What's the problem here, Chuck? Come on.
Well, I don't know what you mean by resistance to change. I am offering something that is change. First of all, with tobacco, we can offer farmers a choice. Grow peanuts, grow, what do you call it, specialize in hybrid popcorns. There's all kinds of other cash crops that a person can grow besides tobacco. And our government should be encouraging that and helping farmers get unhooked from growing tobacco and get them onto another cash crop that is just as valuable as tobacco. But tobacco has been growing for hundreds of years in some of these states, so it's hard to get farmers to switch over. But if you give them incentives, and this would be a good time to take that special money the government gives tobacco farmers to grow tobacco, give them that money, wean them off the tobacco, and give them the money to grow cash crops, and then totally wean them off of any kind of subsidy from the government. But use those subsidies to wean them off the growing of a drug that has killed millions of people, including your relatives out there, including the people that are laying in a hospital that have problems with cigarettes right now, the different diseases they've contacted from it, and the people the friends and family and relatives that have died from this disease. And it's a disease, it's a self-inflicted disease, but once you've got it, once you destroy your lungs, it's hard to get another pair of lungs unless you've got, what, $500,000 for a lung transplant. And there's not that many lungs laying around you can pick up.
No,
Okay.
not too many people want to get rid of their lungs.
So we're talking about change, I'm talking about change. I'm talking about getting these ads off the billboards that every child in Eau Claire can see, and that everywhere you drive in town you can see the big ads glorifying tobacco and glorifying smoking. And second of all, get the state of Wisconsin out of the tobacco business, and there's no reason why the state of tobacco should be having loan programs through one of its state agencies. There's no reason why the state of Wisconsin should be investing in any kind of, taking any kind of their retirement funds or any funds that they have excess and investing it in companies like Philip Morris, P. Lorillide, or any of the other tobacco companies. There's no reason for it, and it's not good, and it's not healthy, and it's bad business for the government to be doing that, because they're helping poison Americans and people in Wisconsin, and then the taxpayer has to foot the bill when they're dying. Now, I said once that there ought to be an option, and it ought to be prorated. As the older you get, the less benefits you get, but there ought to be a contract that people sign whereby they're gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna continue to smoke, but I'm signing this contract saying that I'm not gonna take money from the government when I'm dying of emphysema or cancer. In other words, they're on their own at a certain point, after the age 30 or whatever, and they're still addicted and they don't want to quit or can't quit. The government is not going to foot the bill for them when they're dying. I'm sure the lawyers, a lot of lawyers work for the government, a lot of paper shufflers. I'm sure they can push away the papers on their desk long enough to shuffle a little contract together for the American people, and let them go from there. If they want to be tobacco addicts, let them do it on their own time, and let them get sick on their own time, or force them, even be better, is to force them to buy tobacco addiction insurance policies.
Right.
And let them pay high premiums for it.
Boost
You're going to
the
smoke,
insurance industry a little
you're going to
bit.
smoke, and you got to buy this policy. And if you don't have this policy, we do a random urine test on you and find out you're addicted to it, then you're going to go into treatment whether you like it or not. But if you don't have the policy, then you're going to get thrown into treatment one way or the other. So there you have it. How about change? Is that change?
That's change.
Great. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
First of all, I love the show. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you.
Second of all, are you for legislation that prohibits the tobacco industry? Because I just feel that the tobacco industry, along with alcohol, is just another way that the man's holding us down.
Well, it's you go into a poor part of any major city, and all you'll see is booze ads and cigarette ads everywhere.
Yeah, because my mother, she smokes. She's addicted to the nicotine. She feels that she herself, even being addicted, feels that if the tobacco industry was limited, that it would help her. She wishes that cigarettes were banned, but I feel that the average person cannot control their own addictions, and I think they're just living off society. I think that's what it is.
Well, you know, there is a symbiotic relationship between the government and the tobacco growers and the lobbyists. Now, the government creates laws, changes laws, or eliminates laws.
Do you think these political action groups are just like living off the tobacco industry's money and then just helping the cyclical, like the evil of smoking? That's what I wonder. Is our own government helping with this?
Oh, of course they are. The government gets all kinds of taxes on each one of these that's sold. There's a tax stamp.
Okay, well that's
There's a tax
all I
stamp
have to
right
say,
on the
but thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later.
There is a tax stamp that is on each one of these. The government gets a major proportion of the money that comes in from this in the form of taxes. So on one hand, the tax money's coming in. You know, another thing they should be forced to do is if the government's taking that tax money in, it should be totally set aside for the treatment and recovery and unaddiction of people that are hooked to tobacco, and set it up so that people can be treated specifically for that reason. But those tax dollars just go into the general fund, and so there's several states that say, hey, we need that, or the government says, hey, there's several states involved and this is their major product is tobacco. We need that tax money coming in. So it's on one hand the government's saying that you see the ads saying don't smoke, it'll kill you, and on the other hand they take the tax money in and then they subsidize the tobacco farmers to grow the poison that's killing you. Now if Newt Gingrich and Steve Gunderson and them want to be heroes and want to be statesmen, instead of just taking the easy way out, they would go along with legislation that would totally eliminate, first of all, the political action committees, special interest groups, and the lobbyists that day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when Congress is in session, pound away at these congressmen, offering them all kinds of money under the table, offering staff cash, offering them trips, offering them trips over to South America to look at some tobacco field over there, some new genetically superior tobacco that's growing, offer them trips around the world, offer money for their children to go to school. It's just one big con and one ripoff. These PACs, all they are is it's legalized bribery. I've been saying it for close to a year. That's what it is. It's legalized bribery. They're bribing the people we send to Washington. They get inside the Beltway, and these special interests get a hold of them, and they totally forget their constituents back home, the health of their constituents. They take the money and run. You look at Steve Gunderson's, I'm using Steve Gunderson as an example because I looked at the money he took, and he took thousands of dollars from PACs that were involved in tobacco production from one end to the other. It's obvious, the handwriting's on the wall, and if Congress and Newt Gingrich really wanted to do something, they'd eliminate the lobbyists totally.
Wasn't that supposed to be one of the main sources of income for Hillary's health care plan?
Lobbyists are into everything.
No, I mean the tobacco tax. They were going to use that to help.
I don't know, that thing was, that book was that thick, I never read the whole thing. It was too much to read, Okay, we're going to move on here. We got a couple calls. We'll take another call, and then we're going to move on to another subject here. The government is up to their old tricks again. There's something about the federal, state, and local law authorities. They like to burn their evidence. In Waco, they burned everything to the ground and then leveled it with bulldozers and tanks so that it was very hard to piece things back together. And thankfully, in that case, Newt Gingrich is calling for an investigation, so there will be hearings on the Waco disaster and the Waco massacre. But unfortunately, Newt has already cut a deal with Janet Reno. He's letting her off the hook, so there's going to be somebody underneath Janet Reno who's going to take the blame for it. Right here in this state, in Tigerton, over to the east, 8 buildings burned in raid on Posse Comitatus. They've done nothing but harass this group for about 15 years now. There's only 4 or 5 of them left, but they 50 law enforcement officers from several jurisdictions, I'm sure the ATF and the whole bunch of them were in there, FBI, state, local, went in there and burned, just leveled this several acre land that the Posse Comitatus owned and burned it out. There was another guy from Michigan. They burned him out down in Arkansas, was it, or somewhere down there?
From North Dakota.
Weaver out there out west in Idaho during the '92 elections, the helicopter was hovering above him with the napalm to burn him out. But unfortunately for the federal agencies, there was a cameraman there who caught sight of them getting ready to dump the napalm, and he started filming, so the feds had to back off, and that's one time they didn't burn somebody out that they were trying to. So we're going to go ahead and get a call here. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
That's Chuck.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Okay. Where are you at there? It's hard to hear you. Are you by the phone? Go ahead.
Get your ass, man.
Huh?
We're smoking grass.
Oh, it sounds like you're in a pipe dream there. It sounds like you're in a pipe down in the basement somewhere. Come up and get some fresh air there. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck, thanks for the insight and all these. I asked you these questions a couple weeks ago and stuff, and You know, I'm sure you sit around and watch TV quite a bit to get a lot of information, but you bring up so many issues and so many different things. Your knowledge must be so vast. Wondering how you get it. Don't tell me over 8 years. Just specifically, how do you get your knowledge? Thank you.
Over 8 years.
Yeah, your show.
Oh,
That was last week's. That's what you told me last week.
about where I get my knowledge and
Yeah.
information? Okay, well, thank you, caller. We appreciate calls like that. Well, ever since I'm a small kid, I've been reading, doing a lot of reading. I've got several college degrees and junior college degrees and close to a master's degree, but most of it is from gathering information and reading it. Tons of newspapers, like you can go to the McDonald's and there might be 3 or 4 different newspapers there. You can pick up stuff there. You can pick it up from CNN. I watch a lot of CNN and C-SPAN. So with CNN and C-SPAN, you can pretty much keep track of what's going on right up to the minute. So you just read, and if you see if I see something unusual in a paper, I'll clip it out and save it. Unusual things that you might not read about a cow flying through the air and killing somebody or something. I like to keep articles like that. And right now at home I have 3 stacks of newspapers about this high from the Leader Telegram that I'm going through. Goes back about 2.5 years, and I go through and I clip out articles on politics and unusual incidences and things that are out of the ordinary, and then I read them and then retain that information, hopefully. So that's how I gather some of my information. Now, I've had requests in the past for people that are below the poverty line who don't have any health insurance. This is a stopgap measure, and I have a 1-800 number here that you can take down for what's called Hill-Burton Free Care Program. And this is a federal government care program that was set up, and most hospitals have to adhere to this. It's a federal program. If they don't adhere to it, a lot of them will lose their standing with their licensing and things. And what this is free and low-cost care in hospitals and other health facilities nationwide. So this is not only hospitals, but other health facilities. So if you're below the poverty line, you can't pay your bills, you need to go to a doctor, you need to go to an emergency room, this number here, you can get the information on the Hill-Burton Free Care Program. That's 1-800-492-0359. So be wary of that. The money is already in the pipeline on that program. It has been for quite a few years. That money is there. It's specifically set aside for people that cannot afford to pay their hospital and doctor bills and health facility bills nationwide. So once again, that number is 1-800-492-0359, and that is the Hill-Burton program for low income and no income individuals that don't have health insurance and can't afford to go to a doctor or to a hospital. Okay, we're going to take one more call, and then Arlene, we're going to get to what you've got on the local educational scene today. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, you sit there and rip on the FBI and the ATF and stuff about how they handled Waco. You got all those people on the other end when they walk in, ready to shoot at all these agents, and you're going to say that they what did they do wrong there? Bullshit!
Okay, well, thank you, caller. What they did wrong is in the case of Waco, all they had to do was arrest the guy. His name was Vernon Howell. He was well known that he played guitar in downtown Waco in some of the bars. He drove through town in a convertible quite a bit. He jogged around town. There was no reason to make a big show, and if when you cut off the head of a snake, the snake dies. All you had to do is arrest Vernon Howell, charge him with these illegal guns, and then go from there. If he's sitting in jail and his followers are back in their compound there without their leader, it would have been a whole different situation. This was a show. This was a show by the Clinton administration to show that they're going to put the thumb on Christians and pseudo-Christian groups. They're going to put the thumb down, and it was a wake-up call. In other words, they're saying we're no longer going to tolerate Christian and other groups gathering guns together and separating themselves from the mainstream or from the main population. You're going to be integrated into the mainstream of the New World Order or whatever it is that's coming, and if you're not, we're going to burn you down and we're going to kill you. That was a botched raid. They planned the thing for 30 days. It'll come out in the hearings that are coming up. Newt Gingrich is not going to let it be covered. John Conyers, a representative from Michigan, said that Janet Reno should resign, that she's a murderer, that she called this thing. They used poison gas. It's outlawed by the Geneva Convention. They pumped it in, killed 27 children, pumped that in for 6 hours before they ever lit the fire, pumped that poison gas into those children. After just a few minutes, it puts grown men down on their knees and they're crying like babies. This was pumped into this place for 6 hours before anything was done. It was a mass murder. It was an example of how Clinton wants to rule by terrorism. He used a homosexual, Janet Reno, to push his plan, and he's got her by the thumb. He's got his thumb on her so that she's going to do what he says. Janet Reno could lose her job out of this. There's no way that they can cover it all up if they have fair and honest hearings. The facts will come out on it. ATF agents said that they planned this raid for 30 days and they botched it. And that's why those ATF agents died that day, is because they never should have been there. They could have arrested the guy without any bloodshed. There's been other examples. Okay, these 8 buildings burned and raid on the Posse Comitatus. That was the headline in the Milwaukee Sentinel on Saturday. It's just another example of overuse of force. From what I understand, there was nobody even there, but the eviction order said to raise the buildings. In other words, to burn them. And that was given by, that was a judge's order signed at 11:30 a.m. on Friday, was to burn the place down. Now, what kind of a country are we going to have where they're going to burn down groups that don't agree with them? If that's the case, then they better get into Milwaukee and get a hold of McGee, because McGee says, the black racist says that he's going to start attacking whites in 1995. And hey, this is January of 95. Go ahead. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, what happened to Fred?
Fred is down with what's called pink eye.
Pink eye?
Yeah, 79 years old, and he's acting like a little kid. Got pink eye.
I thought those are red glasses you got on, not pink.
Those are what? Oh, Fred has got pink eye, so he's not here with us today. Hopefully he'll be back next Monday evening. By the way, last Monday night we had Jeffrey Dahmer's.
You're Jeffrey Dahmer?
Jeffrey Dahmer's minister was on, and we had, and he was a last-minute replacement for Dave Plombaum, whose grandmother died, so we couldn't. He couldn't come on. He had a funeral to go to. So I talked to Dave Plombaum, and he's seriously thinking about coming on next Monday night's program to alleviate some of the rumors and stuff that are out there and give us the straight dope on what happened back in December on that whole debacle. And of course, you see in the Leader Telegram just about every day there's a editorial or a letter to the editor calling for Dave's resignation. So we want to get the facts from Dave and about how his recovery is going and how he's being treated in Madison and back here in his district. So as the way it looks right now, he will be on next Monday night at 9 p.m. if everything goes okay. So I think we have a call on line 1 again. Is that right, Roy Rogers? Well, thank you, Roy. Roy's in the studio. Roy Rogers. And of course, how did you get that name, Roy, when you were born? Oh, yeah, I remember now. His dad was watching a Hopalong Cassidy movie, and so he named him Roy Rogers. He's sitting there in the hospital waiting for his mother to give birth, and a light bulb went off in his head, and he called him Roy Rogers Hoff. And the rest is history. So we got a call now. We'll take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck, I just wanted to say that I'm encouraged with your show, and
Thank you.
But I wanted to say to the other callers out there that got to call in. I watched a few weeks back ago the harassment that Fred took. It was one evening, and it was amazing. And it's funny how some of these people don't grow up and got to call in and somehow get their kicks on beating you guys up. And I appreciate your show.
Well, thank you.
I just wanted to call you and encourage you to keep up the good work.
Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. You know, we like those kind of calls here. And you know, Fred is at that age where he's got a very thick skin. His skin's about 2 inches thick, and he can handle the criticism. He's been taking it ever since he's a little boy for over 70 years. So Fred is kind of one of those guys that have went off on his own tangent, and he sees what's right and what's wrong, and he's trying to do what's right out there. And sometimes what's right is not necessarily popular. And so Fred takes a lot of heat, but he's stuck to his guns, and he's usually proven right over the years. Okay, we got a couple calls waiting, but Arlene, what do you got short here on education, and then we'll go to another call, and then we can come back to you.
Well, there was one thing that was mentioned at the school board meeting last Monday that was interesting. The OBE study committee gave their report to the school board. It was an 18-page report, but they really didn't start with any recommendations until page 13, so that cut down on their real report. And their recommendation was that outcome-based education not be implemented district-wide at this time, but they encouraged individual schools to implement it through pilot projects.
Uh-huh. So there was more to what the headline said in the Leader Telegram. It just said OBE.
Given failing grade or something
Yeah.
like that, yes.
So part of it has already been put into place, though, in some of the schools.
Part of it is already in some schools, and they're encouraging the further use of outcome-based education through pilot projects in other schools.
Well, over the years, the educational elitists have learned how to do end runs and offer one thing to the press while they're doing an end run over here, doing something on the right-hand side over here. They're waving this hand, telling you to look over here while they're doing an end run on you there. And so that's kind of sounds like what they've done here with the OBE. They're quietly putting it into place while the headlines say, don't worry about it.
It's going away.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We're not going to implement it here.
There was one recommendation that I actually agreed with this OBE study committee, and it's only a couple lines long. If I could read it, it says, a public education program must be provided to inform the community, the Board of Education, parents, students, and the school district staff about innovative programs that are piloted and or adopted.
Uh-huh. So does that mean that somebody wants to do a little innovative program where they have school prayer or something? Will that be adopted?
That would be highly unlikely.
Well, I understand the head of the local socialist school system is supposedly a Christian socialist.
Well, you could call him that. He fought very hard not to have prayer at graduation last year.
Mm-hmm. Must be one of those liberation theologists.
It must be.
Kind of at odds with his own beliefs. Okay, well, we'll take a call here, and then we'll see what's going on out there in Eau Claire land. And of course, we are coming to you live from the beautiful downtown L.E. Phillips Memorial Library and Taco Stand and Book Emporium. And we do have a book sale that's going to be coming up in the basement of the library, or the library does. I'm just traveling through here. I'm a pilgrim down here. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
All right, Chuck. I'm a college student at the university here. I'm a political science major, and just been real motivated by your show, and just wondering if you would be interested in having a college student sit at your round table and have a little discussion one evening with your other guests. I'd be very interested in coming on.
On what subject?
Well, whatever you deem, if you need some input from a college community and so forth.
Do you actually believe you're getting a decent political science education out there?
Well, more importantly, yeah, I'm getting a good education, but the experiences through work-related jobs, I think that's more important. But it's a necessity to get a 4-year degree.
I'll tell you what we can do. You can go off the air here, and we'll stay on for a second. And Roy Rogers Hoff,
Okay.
or Cliff and Chris Economaki, the Siamese twins of engineering, one of those three will take your name down and phone number, and we can get back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chuck.
All right, thank you. Okay, Roy, you better get that before I switch to the other line. You got it, Roy?
I'm on there. Wait.
Okay. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck. I was wondering where you got those glasses you got there.
Well, these are those blue blockers.
Oh, geez, them
Wow.
are really nice.
There's a lot of blue light down in here, and so, and with the snow outside and the winter and everything, these help keep down the glare, and we do have very bright lights down here, and that could be where Fred got the pink eye.
Well, my question is what's the going rate these days for a pound of marijuana?
Well, I don't know, but I saw where somebody locally got arrested for something like, I think it was a half ounce. He had charged an undercover agent $100, so you figure it out. If an ounce is going for 100 or 200, and you take that times 16, you're looking at around either between 1,600 and 3,200 per pound. That's quite expensive for a weed, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So,
All right, thank you, Chuck.
okay. So you get a variety of questions on here, and you have to know a little bit about everything. That's why I read those articles like that. And I noticed there's been several raids here in the last few days up in, well, within a 50-mile radius of Eau Claire. And they're finally, some of these law enforcement agencies are finally busting people besides kids that are smoking ditchweed. They're getting into some of the cocaine and some of the other drugs that are a lot more harmful and a lot more way of destroying your body than marijuana. So, we got another little tidbit on education here.
Yeah. I've got one more thing that they had a big argument about at the school board meeting last week, and that is a policy that our esteemed Dr. Hansen has come up with, a proposed policy on high school student attendance at athletic tournament contests. And basically what it does is it takes all parental rights away when it comes to children, high school students attending state tournaments, and gives it to the school. If you want to take your child to Madison to attend a state tournament, you have to go to the school and sign a waiver of responsibility that the school won't be held liable for anything your child does while he's in Madison with you.
With the school, you mean?
No, with you. If you go down there
As a parent?
as a parent and take your child with you, you have to sign a waiver that the school will not be held liable for anything your child does.
Why would the school be held liable anyway if you're going with your parent?
I couldn't figure that one out, but it's in the policy.
I understand they're trying to discourage people going down separately. Students going down separately, they want them to ride down in school buses.
Only on school buses, yes.
Now, what if the school bus flips over?
Then the school will be liable.
So would there be more liability if they have to take 10 buses instead of 3?
Absolutely.
They would have
And-
more law cases.
And if the students are forced to stay overnight, you know, if they have to stay overnight for a state tournament, then they have to have a supervisor in each room, each hotel room, with the kids, which means 1/4 of the people who go down, 1/4 of the bus space will be chaperones.
Well, you know, if they start doing that, they're going to have to take a case of condoms, a couple cases of whiskey, 4 or 5 kegs of beer just to keep the kids out of trouble down there.
Yeah. It's the whole policy is ridiculous, and I would encourage parents to call the superintendent's office and ask for a copy of this proposed policy, because they may vote on it next Monday night at the school board meeting.
What number can they call for more information on that? Do you have a number that they
I
call you?
don't. It's listed under the Eau Claire Schools, the superintendent's office.
Uh-huh. But it sounds like there'd be more liability instead of less by implementing that policy.
Yeah, there were board members that voiced concern about that it would cause more liability.
Was one of them an attorney?
Yes.
Hello? Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Chuck,
Yeah.
great job I think you're doing here.
Thank you.
Question, you spoke earlier with a political science student at the U.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a possibility you'll be having him on for a roundtable discussion.
Yes.
My question is, I'm an exotic dancer. Do you think possibly I could come on?
Well, you can leave your number with Roy Rogers Hoff back there. We'll get back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
I saw your cow hat there, your skunk hat there on your head. I was wondering, how come you got a skunk hat on there when you chose about cows? I'm a student at the U here, hey.
You are? You sound like you're from Canada.
I'm from Canada. I'm from the Upper Peninsula.
See, this isn't a skunk hat, it's a raccoon.
That's a raccoon hat.
Some people...
Upper Peninsula, that is a raccoon hat. You got the tail there. Where'd you get that hat from?
My brother makes these. This was a roadkill that was recycled into something useful instead of fox bait.
My brother got me one of them deer costumes with the antlers on. I put it on, and I got antlers sticking out of my head.
Huh. Are you going to have them surgically removed or what?
No, it's like my brother's hat.
Oh yeah, I see now.
Your thing. Okay.
Well, what's your question tonight?
I just wanted to know where you got the hat from.
Well, they're
That's all.
you can get them up in northern Minnesota at a place called Two Rivers Trading Post up there, way up in the northern part of the state.
Okay.
Way up by a little town called Hill City, Minnesota.
I think I'll just go up to Canada and get me one of them. Okay.
Yeah, all right, well, thanks a lot. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's the cow, something or other there. That's our cow mascot there. He wandered in here the other day, and of course, this being a taco stand and a library, you know, once in a while we have to pull one of the cows from the slaughterhouse to save him, so we saved this little guy here because he was too young to be slaughtered.
He could be an endangered species at a taco stand.
All right, well, yes, that's for sure. That's why we grabbed him and got him out of there, got him off the assembly line. Well, I got a little story here on HIV, and it says now that scientists have come up with the notion now that HIV is highly contagious in the first 60 days that you have it. So in other words, it's very contagious. That's when it...
Before you test positive.
Yeah, that's when the most serious time is. Say somebody says, I'm negative, they have sex with somebody else that's supposedly negative, that person has just got the contagious disease from somebody else. A lot of people are getting infected not even knowing that the person that they're having intercourse with is infected, and so that's when it spreads most rapidly, is during that period. And it says here, a University of Michigan study announced Friday by the university found that in the first 60 days after being infected, a person could transmit the AIDS virus to someone else in as many as 3 out of 10 sexual encounters. Of course, when saliva and bodily fluids are being transferred, it's very easy. It's a contagious disease. It's much like a virus, like the cold virus, other flu viruses. The pink eye that Fred got a hold of is a virus. They're very easily transmitted. The big lie is that they're not transmittable. This is a contagious disease, and finally the authorities are even calling that, even in this headline. It said HIV is highly contagious. Now, in all contagious diseases in the past, they've had what's called quarantines. For us older folks, we remember things like quarantines, and they also had places where they would send people which were called sanitariums, where they could be separated from the healthy population and get the treatment they needed so that they could get back to health. Well, all that's been thrown out the window now. Everybody is subject to being afflicted with this disease now, whether you're homosexual, young, old, heterosexual, bisexual. This disease is in the general population, as it is in countries in Africa, and that's why people are coming down with it.
Well, and it can take up to 18 months for a test to come back positive.
Mm-hmm. Sure can. Well, we're going to take a call here. Go ahead, caller. Whoops, we lost that one. We'll let the man in there take care of that. All right. Did you have one more thing on education there today?
Nope, that's it.
That's it. We still got 7 minutes left.
Just the tournaments and the OBE report. That's all I had.
Getting back to those tournaments now, is that something that we're going to have to worry about, kids staying overnight and getting pregnant and things like that? Won't there be a lot of liability there if a girl comes back pregnant from a little weekend or overnight tournament down in Madison or
Well, it wouldn't only be that.
Milwaukee?
I talked about that the other night. If a girl does get pregnant down there on a school-sponsored trip, could the school system be held responsible for the care of the child?
Yeah. And if the condom breaks, then what happens?
I don't know. Lots of questions with this.
Okay, I understand we have a call on line 2, so go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
How you doing, Chuck?
Okay, how are you today?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what was it up with that clown that just called about the exotic dancer?
Well, they have that dance club out there by Menominee. What's the name of it? Shooters or something out there in the middle of nowhere.
Wasn't it a guy, though?
I think they have a male night out there too. But there are dancers that dance in the Eau Claire area when the.
You wouldn't really have them on there or something like that, would you?
No, probably not. Fred might decide to have him on the conservative corner, but this show here is too conservative. Maybe Fred might think about it, but.
What's wrong with Fred again?
Fred has pink eye, and it's something that mostly children have. Now, he was in contact with some children over the Christmas holidays, but his wife does a lot of charity work in the nursing homes, and it could be something that she picked up and passed through her system without coming down with it. And of course, Fred and her are in close contact quite a bit because they're both elderly, so it could have been something that was passed from her to him without her even getting sick from it.
How's his brown eye?
I don't know. All right, now we got an issue here on power lines linked to brain cancer. So if you got one of them big high-rise power lines out there above your house, there is evidence now that shows that there is a link between those power lines and all that high dosage of electricity going through there and brain cancer. So please, stay out from underneath them power lines out there. And long-term exposure to power lines appears to slightly increase risk of brain cancer, but not leukemia. Now, the people that were tested in this study were utility workers, people that are around this stuff all their life. Some earlier studies linked electromagnetic fields to leukemia among utility workers, but no study has been conclusive on the risks. And there was no association found between the amounts of magnetic field exposure and leukemia. The research was funded by the Electric Power Research Institute. So that was nice of them to let us know that. I'm surprised they even let that information get out.
I wonder if sitting under all these lights could do the same thing.
Well, they could. I know they do give you a tan. I've gotten off here with these lights on, and
With a sunburn?
actually have a red face from the lights. Okay, I think we might have a call here. We'll try it. Oops. Maybe it's the wrong line. Oops. Okay. Well, we're down to about 2 minutes here. And we lost that call, but it's coming back on the air. Now, I want to let you know that Fred, you want to watch your papers for Fred's show. Hopefully we got to get Fred back up out of bed. Here he was going back to bed at 1 o'clock this afternoon. He was going to lay down. I said, Fred, you know it's your age. You got to keep moving. You start laying down and not being active, and it's over for you. So we want to encourage Fred to get back up out of bed and keep chugging away. And if he does, you know, I heard a tape today, an inspirational tape, and the guy said there, a person without a purpose in life is like a boat without a rudder. So if you have a purpose, that equals out to long-term life. You got to always have a purpose in front of you, something you want to achieve, something you want to do, and something you're striving for. As long as you have that, you have a reason for living. In concentration camps during World War II, the people that gave up didn't have any hope, or they didn't have somebody on the outside that they were worried about getting out to or looking forward to seeing. Those people died. The ones that had a purpose or a reason for living, they lived in much greater proportion. Okay, we're going to try and take one of these calls. We had 3 of them come in. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, that hat looks like a big furry penis.
Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air. All right. Well, we're down to about 30 seconds, so hopefully next week now we'll have Dave Plombaum on and we can get some of these innuendos and stories and lies all straightened out and get the true facts, the true dope on what happened back in December, get this all cleared up. And we want to thank Roy Rogers Hoff and Joel Dupre, and we want to thank Arlene Kruger for Citizens for Quality Education to be here. I've been your host, Chuck Lee, and Fred, get back down here for next Monday night show. We'll see you again next Monday night. Good afternoon.